all on because you're good.
Like, give me a sec to get time. Okay, now. Great.
In fitness, what is marijuana? The law for your standard for federal trademarks, mandates compliance with federal law, and registration requirement, blocking cannabis trademarks due to their illegality. Adult 21, federal is not available cannabis trademarks below the PCL plans. It is still prohibited for trademarks being standards legal by the federal government, can relate to goods and services apart. From trademark registration, from standard trademark registration, work, misuse, and commerce, the commerce must be lawful by individual state legalized cannabis is not as the use is legal under federal law. The mandate is not a statute, is a statute of nature, even if Congress have descheduled marijuana PTO still knowledge that state activity in commerce 2018 harmful and registration trademarks are not allowed except the exclusion of marijuana PTO should guide clarifying commerce are no longer been U.S. leads the border innovation modes of duration of lack of cross-border exchanges. Cycle exports product, net 20 growth and West Coast water product in the world behind the demand, and the grocery shipped other goods to the U.S. Now for drive innovation, the way for the export program lifted more states, grow good weight sophistication under the U.S. industry, lead better quality innovation in the world tech, and the U.S. industry shows and foreign customers out value oversight product. This safe and adult ready trademarks are key to commercialization and product reliability of those events and covers. Net 22 recent industry just industry cannabis trademark application products are eligible for production because such goods are not used lawfully to production and industry trademark creates a low market challenges. Let's see directly with other similar market companies. Then at first, established business and can go branding sales, so limits across eligibility whether they comply with CSA or FTC, CTAP and knowledge for products CBD brand ineligible the FTC for profitable. And CBD sales to determine to yourself business given the marketplace and more customers. Never to future digital 3,000 active trademark application cannabis. Then restricted on mobile laws of finally international applications single platform priority. Over conversation on members of brands by higher trademarks encourage repeat the sales. And the general leads space of one industry over none other brands that interested in each different encouraging commercial production by each critical point. The cannabis will work cover broken life. Manufacturer of access to cannabis federal trademarks and federal standards. And if brands that use your recent litigation state trademark will not erratic cause against another company brand production with high levels of investment and traditional industries who illicit activities with cannabis trademark children and the rest of substance industries and making not be eligible. The story resistant and the different parties check profits also leads as popular brand and fixed use on the logo and teacher and register. Cannabis innovation also solves AMR reason. Net 24 reasons why the potential cannabis of revolution BR cannabis stripping nature of global fighting against bacteria resistant to antibiotics and minimized with property distributed CBD smell, depressing cell activation, TCM, plant function, proliferation, and production. AMR creates engineered pathogens, extinction, Johnson. Net 22 GCR association with a century drug, resistant constitution, CBR, no exploration, taking into account, resistant most of the part of engineered pathogens as directed by weapon and developed as part of future pathogens. It causes environmental overshoot, extinction, or grow. Net 21 resistant bacteria is integrated normal with microbiome, disease, storage, immunity, resistant, and multiple genetic elements. The critical aspect of the earth, oxygen, nitrogen, solar inertia, the mitochondria rights to boost the earth and system of life of human health, antibiotic use, reduce long-term risk for the health of the earth. It allows us to survive nuclear war. Green 18 cannabis with ability to remove reactive waste more new combats health and survive nuclear war, which are become marijuana immediately show. The following cannabis psych particles and metals bioremediation happens one of the best. Federal trade protection polices out the black market river. Net 20 not protection trademarks only occurs in agricultural services granting trademark registration allow legitimate markets police out the black market state trademarks no sufficient states with cards allow the interstate travel covered over states only federal trademark law policing from legal business regional law companies police the black market protecting trademarks which allows it to horse 7 and protecting customer no scrupulous even without legalization permitting trademark registration will the cannabis black market fuels Chinese organized crime tell Net 24 Chinese crime dominating illicit marijuana passport is that legalization of all differences have created the black market global black market valued at 44 billion in year 80% of these are Chinese propelling for drug rights of Chinese crime global powerhouse security officials. Net say Chinese crime creates Asian conflict club. Net 24 is becoming green Russian transnational crime Chinese crime cyber conflict. The global country governance ruled by power arms and fuel conflict. And Chinese police crackdowns on gambling, fraud, and laundering, atomic sanity. And China will continue to claim because crime that goes nuclear saha. Net 23 China Southeast Asia are becoming the third great power competition in the US. Net China lives to test the ground for China's development China. It's working on developing a COC, the China South China Sea still playing. Let's try to actually US. It's Indian people China that's where you can influence the response to Chinese competitions only. It's despite police rapid military station. The US here to close for 70 time on US. Yes, development is slowing up. COC is the only feasible way for common development sustainable common SES in the near future independently organized crime in Southeast Asia causes a global war. Net 21 illicit economies tremendous security cost life of clever guys where criminal organizations, terrorist groups, illicit economies, undermines good democracy rule of law. And barrel sustainability claim promise illicit economies are prevent the multiplies nation collections corrupt leaders online. Security chamber president drives out the Sinaloa cartel by spring. US Mexico bilateral average no. Net 17 crypto and works to develop less visible new traffic organization grade and greater protection for cannabis strippers, reduce crime organizations. Net separate coordination cartel. Net change more so the profitability for individuals or chain registration. Net smart cannabis for governments more sounds more effective bilateral efforts to reduce crime. No along the Sinaloa. Otherwise they undermine US global commitments, smart global arms uses. How to 10 isolating Mexico should build American revenue card crackdown preventing insurgency. That affect the Americans role in the rest of the world Canada border cross. Many parts of the military as allies and adjust and disruptive arms uses. Illicit weed smuggling causes nuclear tax play. Net 17 nuke can be stronger than the US to build a marijuana express selective lane preferred. Method for delivering nuclear device to develop marijuana good shield of radiation drug loads. Capital delivery for the method for shipping this section harvest test. It would be easy. The plans for competition unlocked cross-border exchange in 20 year. You get 24 federal chamber additional laws sustained to raise legal remedies and access to funding and capital differentiated products and their profits and water profits sustainable project competition for certification rights are higher registrations to protection laws for cannabis. National cannabis chamber production law easy expression. In other states, of course, I'll say production cannabis improve the government ability to standardize states for federal chambers ease access to other states and countries now when the enable country to greater and expand business. Therefore, the United States federal government should significantly strengthen its protection of domestic trademarks by limiting registration refusals made on the basis that a trademark unlawfully violates federal statutes if it issues overage. PTO enforcement of lawful use undermines deference to other agencies' enforcement and creates a de facto private cause of action for laws unrelated to trademarks. Because 22, all lawful use undermine the administration of other federal laws, PTO sanctions violations. I'm not sure if laws against the expertise or discretion exercise statute PTO fails to give deference to PTO assist. Upon imposing other states with others would not be abiding with the source of the PTO terms. The carefully orchestrated enforcement regime should not enforce use of marijuana. It's based on the belief that the states without system regulated by the legislation that marijuana PTO undermines the premise of choosing policy lawful use requirement creates a facto private cause of action of the statute with the non-related to any private enforcement. PTO effectively gives any private enforcement of federal law. That de facto private cause of action creates a backdoor for enforcement of other statutes. The FTCA Grade 17 application of lawful use creates backdoor letting back backdoor for other statutes. No private cause of action. FTCA creates no private cause of action on goods of the lawful use. Now on the basis of the registration of numerous cases, except in the lawful use based on the FTCA without mentioning any problem. It's not clear that guarantees drug shortages cure more. Next 24 drug shortages are more common U.S. experience with more shortages and can also scramble the local left-hand drug shortage while combating shortages complicated in manufacturing disrupting quality issues the greatest black models not to address the problem solely by increasing production can structure like to shortage traditional pharmacies and the effective shortage combating global supply and radiating secure completely the important capital more business shortage TOP1 antagonist type 2 diabetes and obesity and mental illness were the unproud march even during shortage farmers challenge combating pharmacies with the litigation between the lawsuits against pharmacies of the legislation for violations of false advertising unfair competition not make out the claims for infringement within businesses then attempts to create private cause of action adverse to system which disrupts the ability of patients access to medicine collapses disease response scores 24 the COVID is the lines of precious license for essential pharma and chronic drug shortage represents an existential health threat versus entire healthcare system vulnerabilities and global supply chain represents the goal public health threat shortage in oncology medication antibiotics pain medication effects patients not being treated severe shortage of recent people unnecessarily die and cause medicines for health system will fail more pronounced like causes an artery by chronic COVID will reveal the need for more stability resilient supply chain systems and access to near medicines pandemics cause exchange of bomb 23 interaction with life pathogen in humans versus zoonosis now larger in history because more points chronic global travel resistance creates opportunities for pathogens early pathogen may only kill small portions of the population deep historical evidence consistent with hyperbole if you make single pandemics they threaten civilizational collapse struggle before causing disruption to food security resulting in insufficient chronic fitness failure of geoengineering temperatures rapidly rise resulting in double catastrophe compound the harms of the initial catastrophe contagious cancer causes extinction shot next 20 systems will represent incredibly extreme phenomena several cancer default on numerous cases of contributing species extinction host cancer default continues to stop the opponents innovation generating evil evolutionary arms race that make it recapitulate to progression of metastatic cascade the plan solves both scenarios they make a 22 of the lawsuits and no place to chair law limiting or not part of limiting opportunity cost and limitations to be used so previously graphically complicated deduction attitudes opportunities nor any possible to work around the requirement without abolishing a PTO could a voluntary abolishing requirement initiative receiving real rule 2.6 now that about the old requirements to term requirement the agency make it clear there's no longer cost of registration because they notify the statutes of the requirement PTO can still register a mark then news and applicants still concerned even then if reading the matter to an agency enforcement law PTO does not abolish lawful use of the courts could validate the requirement at the next opportunity.
Are you good for context?
Yep.
Okay. I want to start on this like Chinese organized crime scenario, the Rebuttal evidence. Or do you think it makes a reverse causal claim that absent like the cannabis black market, Chinese crime falls apart?
Yeah, I mean, it says that the cannabis black market is a substantial part of Chinese organized crime. It says that it's generating $44 billion per year, and 80% of it's on the rise also, so it makes a predicting claim. It says it's propelling the rise of Chinese crime.
Okay, but where does that, like, that didn't really answer my question.
Yeah, so funding is the reverse causal
argument.
arguments. By removing funding, that would remove a substantial portion of Chinese organized crime funding, which at least decreases its growth now.
Okay, I guess. Let's talk about this last scenario on the advantage. The illicit weed smuggling causes nuclear attacks. So is the argument that you have a bale of marijuana with bombs just like inside of it?
Yeah, so nuclear terrorists would use marijuana, especially through cartels, to sneak nukes into the United States and attack.
Okay, and how does the plan prevent that?
Because it decreases the black market, which would decrease the amount of illicit marijuana going into the United States, which decreases the chance nuclear terrorists do that.
Okay, so do you have to win that like not a single terrorist organization out there gets access to like weed from the black market to solve this?
So impact is linear. The app probably decreases the amount of illicit marijuana coming through our borders, which decreases the likelihood of a nuke being spread.
Okay, but the app does not like the only internal link to solving this is like the black market, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
it's the black
enforcement of
Okay, so
illicit marijuana.
someone who like legally gets weed in like Asia and then brings it on a plane with a bomb like that, how does you guys solve that?
Well, like, first, I don't think you can carry a nuke on a plane, cause that's not how like.
Well then like how do they get into the US?
It's like through things like trucks that are just piling like loads of marijuana to like suck up the radioactivity, and then there are planes on the border that view the radioactivity and try to find patterns to pick up abnormalities, and then.
Okay, let's talk, I guess, does the AF lead to federal legalization of marijuana?
No.
It does not?
No.
Okay, so,
Well, yeah.
Normal means
okay, so then, like, the Harlook card says that legal marijuana is creating the best product, it's tightly regulated, the crop would be in high demand, it says, quote, because marijuana is illegal federally, growers aren't able to shift, then I'm a bit confused, because the evidence seems to say that you started legalization.
Our last card on the advantage pantieri answers the importance explained by our Harlook evidence that says that removing the lawful use requirement will allow for cross-border exchanges, which Harlook identifies as the reason why innovations are not being exported internationally and not being used.
I see, so he's like low-key wrong, like there's a loophole to get
No,
around.
no, Harlook identifies the problems, pantieri says abolishing the lawful use requirement will solve.
Okay, alright, let's talk, I guess, normal means agent.
USTO.
Okay.
The ones you said were 7 off in case, or case in order marijuana of each.
I'm sorry, one more time.
7 off
Okay.
marijuana of each.
Okay. That's in order to,
Yeah, we're good.
That may-
okay, I'm ready.
I mean,
First time establishing the United States federal government should rule that Northeast protection and intellectual property rights by its amendment restrictions on common and conditions that encourage involved authority to provide substantial status, including financial status removal of all federal barriers to states territories through an interested compact strengthen protection trademarks by eliminating registration for fields made on the basis that trademark unlawfully violates statutes. The campaign avoids politics, sells better, and sets a model for state experimentation. Glen 13 countries like United States of Primary and Political have not had sufficient personnel and state administration or more experience. Sometimes experimentation state-based policy and pressure itself with these two federal programs and implementation states or for the expanded become more expert this makes their utilization more likely states. They develop administration through which states and prescription shocking future fertilization, extinction wise, 21 tech, cure disease, penetration, stop technique, as a guide in responsible action required bond and prevention for state that are responsible for the pressure limits on innovation that lead to nuke war, AI, drivers, and climate change, helping need strengthening these issues require expertise to manage risk and to state governments issued with national short term action. Next off, the development DA, the United States federal government should judicially legalize marijuana and have established a marijuana with intent to use trademark system, abolish Article 1, Section A, Clause A. The United States Constitution, Plank 1 tells the entirety of Evidence 1 ensures we can be trademarked because lawful use of requirement will apply. So does Plank 2, Christian 19 issues surrounding federal trademarks. Marijuana is unique companies moved state by the state out of market, putting other restrictions to the law answers ITU for marijuana can notice to all others market notice for all others IP protections decimated developing countries with lower innovation turning the entirety case Ariel in all 23 using the district IP protection hamper developing countries research limit learning through imitation and innovation impacts export extinction while 22 development benefits used by reducing our conflict pandemics so people get education participate institution improves governments which navigate external improves the public health cause external risk through international security and check terrorism and crime politics DA next off the politics DA United States federal government should pass the Tax Against the Child Act reconciliation bill will pass now but Trump is applying pressure signed 426 Trump made a request of Congress's leaders to deliver one big beautiful bill framework the bill allows them to circumvent Democratic opposition plan trees operate monthly and 9 prosecuting illustrations legal norms species regarding Trump and reach consensus on the legislation reforms hard by 6 long time issues circumvent this populist esoteric agency actions does link Christian 15 participate bill has pressure against the infrastructure the act unilateral contract congressional preferences receiving coverage influence opinion to against executive passing budget key to shipbuilding 25 but the House of budget, defense 100 million defense, the policy, international base restock, ammunition expansion, and capacity began to destroy, deterrent, nuclear war, capital 21, industry, nail power crisis, the strong African escalation conflict, the rising disputes correlated to declining tonnage, rising powers of Russia, Egypt, India, Iran, and Indoka, expanding increasing confirmation of our wars, rise to the line size, and extending deterrence, next off security, the rhetoric makes perpetual insecurity level, Will Simpson, 21, securitization produces social activities, and that's what's any other door, the level of exceptional, there's more reasonable use of force against others, power is cast as a different future represents a powerful and attractive opportunity for mobilization with a purpose, consequence, negative spiral is a test pushes the representation of where description practice contribute to the onset of war. 26 description of Chinese Okran displays violence references to Chinese people as the gangsters and utilized strips of the triad or Hollywood video game style constructions that ensures violence against Asian people. WordPress 18. Internalized sentiment as Asians were categorized as a single group. Learning American values, stereotypes were created to make them appear as another one stereotype. Asian support criminals used to justify exclusion, modern and media reinforce these negative views associated with gangs. Almost Yale Americans have regarded Asians as dangerous, inscrutable, and unassimilable, reinforced by depiction of Asian as criminal. Vote negative from critical theory. The best addresses one you see. Dunning the 24. Critical theory provides insight to create limitation of positivist approaches, develop constructive pathways, understanding the dynamics of war, rationality, and press consciousness, native political unity, solidarity, dogmatism, orthodoxy, need critical theory to express oppressive discourses meant to support IR helps us to further understand and address institutional novelty and crisis. Next up, it teaches us as in means throughout WPOA should be construed to mean throughout violation. The act does not strengthen the entire area of trademarks, vote neg, anything else kills them to the ground by enabling infinite subset acts that no make every generic. Next up is the injunction count that the United States program, the United States agencies should announce their intent to limit trademark registration refusals made on the basis that a trademark unlawfully violates federal statutes. The United States Federal District Court should strike down the above policy. The national injunction directly to the federal legislature do not implement the previous action. The Supreme Court of the United States to grant cert to any cases that result in ruling on the constitutionality of the above nationwide injunction, particularly in the case of injunction property comprehensive implementation on the courts eliminating nationwide injunction. Nationwide injunctions are increasing now in turn solvency, but SCO's action stops it if litigated. The Republic Court will strike them down. Literature in turn 24. Judicial conference court of the judge option. With so many clauses of lawsuits seeks nationwide injunction, it must be repeatedly decided. Judge option is a problem in litigation counsel. Has spent years going to the same judge doors. Has dropped the hammer and complaint about the scourge of nationwide injunctions. National injunctions in the last 10 years have become a thing. This policy does not stop nationwide injunction. Nationwide injunction remain until the Supreme Court stopped it. This has no basis at all in the Constitution. Core limitation on executive agencies that the period exists in the government extinction. Emerson in the 24 as court takes in the fair cases agencies. The rest of the rights that exist challenge many whose basic capabilities to prevent unfair financial practices, regulate accounting practices, reduction of emissions, etc. Before prevent COVID mergers as with pandemics, environment, health, economic deception, administrative actors is necessary component of cost protection and validation. The regulatory power to ship back firms against an expert court comes down to political preference, not regions. Next up, the Constitutional Convention company that 50 states and all relevant subnational actors should call for ratifying limited Constitutional Convention to strengthen the protection of domestic trademarks. Eliminating registration refusals made on the basis that a trademark unlawfully violates federal statutes. Strengthen protection of trademarks by eliminating registration refusals made on the basis that a trademark unlawfully violates state statutes. It solves possible holland and avoids politics. And then tomorrow, Constructive has a path to states if Congress approved unruly Article 5 can be held for limited purposes. Plank 2 solves don't bet key warrant an advantage. Now, marijuana advantage. One, MBA has written an inquiry here advantage for evidence that the U.S. is already leading in innovation and regulating safety, but no legalization means we cannot export it between states or across the world, which the act does not solve for. That's inserted in pink. 2, biodiversity is overhyped. Retreat 24, population dwindle. The numbers come again. This has happened in many times. African, Asian, elephant, and the wheel were on viewpoint. We pulled on handbrake and just in time competition started recovery. Have always had the opportunity to turn things around. 99% of these species live are gone. Species no longer extinct, and new species that arise. This is evolution. 3, weed growing cannot solve nuclear war. Radiation kills us all. And the cards from a Brewster article, which is satire. 4, no AMR, Smith, 17 centuries, vaccines have effective control, infectious of water, and the bleach, alcohol kills us, so drugs is fine. None are in short supply, work 16 years, continuity of use of antibiotics. These bugs will pick up mutation risk will be largely confined, extremely unlikely, causing global pandemic. 5, no internal link between organized crime. And nuclear conflict never says that criminals will get their hands on nukes, and their evidence can see that China is already cracking down on no crime. 6, no nuke terror scenario. The requires citing random statements from a couple of senators does not explain a single actor's motives to launch a nuclear bomb, or how it estimates. 7, no crime impact. Patrick. 17, crime is localized in connection between state police and crime. Theory, collapse, states are less attractive stuff. Criminals need services such as lacking in war states for criminals. Drug proximity. 8, no Asian war, Michael Browning. 20, Asian been free of war closure practices in the street. The vision of impetus for dialogue. Asian has some aim to be as inclusive, bring together India, Pakistan, North Korea, North and South Korea, China, and Japan. Most Asian countries are bound together by free trade agreements. Measure conflict in Asia remains unlikely. Governments recognize the Asian country is the best opportunity to expand their economies and improve living standards and reaching well-established processes that create knowledge, culture, and happiness. I guess the conflict, even if the U.S. and China drift further apart, Asia will maintain good relations with both, provide that a buffer needed to contain rivalries, perilous spell. Verse 9 can't solve. Chinese companies will ship to other countries to export marijuana production. 10, if border security is so weak that they can ship it through weed, then terrorists will just ship nukes through other methods in hiding. Overreach advantage. 1, no internal link between trademark, private action, and P2 cooperation over patent. 20, see Lavelle. It's about panic cooperation and patent policy. That's inserted in below. Oh, give me the off my hat. One time.
Two, MBA has highlighted evidence like a haiku. It says that most drug-related IP issues are patent-based, not PCOA. Their evidence is also about two companies and not drug shortages, but large operating the portions outside of their original cutting. The risk behind litigation lurks in the background. Place of patent infringement against pharmacies, drugs, and shortages. The risk of litigation risk imposing and showing for confounding and hurting patients. So neither most three neither natural nor engineered pandemics. In about 16 that takes out AMR above in cancer. Percent 23. High numbers need evidence under the reason for skepticism. Legal article. Everyone needs to reach the most rule in kernels and circuit research stations. Summaries, bunkers, charts, and restaurants. Each new style of transmission mechanism without a detected virus and until all infected conflicts with a virus that's 100% lethal. And the virus 100% infectious without fail to every need to avoid references equivalent can maintain throughout media digitation. The virus unprecedentedly lethal, killing all or preserved against bendable treatments. That's a way to evade basic health measures you need to equipment to synthesize. Advantage one chairs is not external component. Napkin 28 present for choices of visualization like is very low in the engineer and microscope and new or novel tech and requesting the amounts of expertise and research far beyond. Chairs is highly contingent on extraneous conditions. Market extraneous conditions. Below now.
Okay, you want to look at that?
Is that just a no bioterror?
It's just the terrors and no terror.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yes.
Status.
Conditional. The status quo is always launch on.
The benefits to counterpoints.
Okay. Devolution is internal plus politics.
Plus politics. Okay.
Development DA is internal.
Right.
Politics. Yeah, politics. Secure. Injunctions is just internal. Con is politics.
Okay. Development TA. So your Ariel link card says hampering developing countries' autonomous research as the impact to IPR protection. Why do you think that means the collapse of development?
Well, it says it limits learning through imitation, which repeats innovation, and explicitly
Yeah,
says
okay.
negatively impacts.
Where have you read it internally? Innovation equals development.
Well, I feel like that's pretty intuitive, like innovation's growth.
Really? Okay.
Well,
Where have you read it internally?
also on top
hold
of
on.
that-
Where have you read it in evidence that development is high now or innovation is high now?
It's unique as time, so we need to start to solve.
Yeah, but obviously there's other IPR protection, right?
Well, banning IP solves that. The third plank bans all IP.
Okay. Why does so third plank bans all IP. Let's go to politics. Your uniqueness evidence seems pretty horrendous to me, to be honest. Where can you identify a single line in this that says that the bill will pass?
Framework for the bill allows them to circumvent Democratic opposition.
Okay, so earlier this month, Republicans muscled through the budget framework for the bill, an
Yes,
important
so
step that
that-
outlines how much they will spend and will cut, and allows them to circumvent opposition in the Senate. What about the House?
Well, I feel like that's sufficient. They
No, but the
also-
House is where the fights are now.
Yes, the first line earlier, framework for the
Oh,
bill.
the first
means
line,
against the House.
Trump made a request of Congress's leaders
No,
to
before,
deliver one.
the before where you're talking about earlier this month, Republicans muscled through the budget framework. That is in the context of the House.
So the line you didn't highlight.
Well, we highlighted framework for the bill.
Yeah, okay. Which parts about the bill? Or
And
the
also-
House, sorry?
Also, if
Wait,
we
hold on. Answer the question. Which parts about the House?
framework for the bill part, and also
In
Trump,
the Senate?
also on top of that, Trump made a request to Congress establishes that it would increase, but also they will renew unique.
I mean, it's like,
Okay.
it's like in the context of the framework that
Yeah.
Republicans in the
Yes.
House have made.
I
It's also pretty
strongly disagree.
in theory.
Just any hidden theory?
No.
Okay. Is the link just political capital?
It's UD and
Sorry?
PC.
Unity and PC? Do you have to win both?
Well, no.
No. So if we disprove one, do we win the other?
Yes, that's what that means.
Okay, great. And what is political capital?
Like what do you like the idea or?
No, what trades off?
Oh, trades off legislation, or not legislation, marijuana trades off because IP is.
No, like what thing in political capital trades off?
I
Like
don't
what
understand
is political capital and why does that trade off?
Well, political capital is basically the president's leverage. The act trades off by reducing his leverage because he has to spend that or justifying it. 10 minutes.
Make sure you look back into the evidence to change.
Is everyone good for quarter? Advantage 1, advantage 2, T subsets, security cache, devolution counterclaim, the development DA, the injunctions counterclaim,
Okay, devolution,
development DA,
yep,
injunctions counterclaim,
yep,
con,
yep.
tax cuts.
You need 1 second on that.
Yep. And you said you had 7 to 10 left? Yeah.
Let me just second that. I wanted- Okay, I'm good.
What is our argument deals with leading innovation, but there's not the ability to export it, which only trigger results which are PTO evidence, because unlike cross-border changes, biodiversity is not a scenario that was, from the old, yes, nuclear winter, cannabis innovation, solar nuclear war, and such stuff, follows prevent radiation, that's our green evidence, booster is not satire, it says, empirics which are normal, and professors, they say no AMR, that's wrong, drop both to specific scenarios, yes, and the first is engineered pathogens, is spread quickly after combining with drug resistance, posing a new threat that's strong to there. This Smith evidence is old and doesn't encourage new developments which make the engineered pathogens more likely than ever, and they've conceded Bakero, which says that once AMR is integrated into the microbiota, they collapse cycles killing ecosystems that sustain human life. Yes, internal between O-crime and nuclear conflict. The Chinese O-crime underwrites weak states to ignite regional conflicts that go nuclear. Let's clap Saha and Tam. Then Saha says that independently Chinese O-crime causes kleptocrats which will go nuclear. Yes, there's an internal link. Yes, nuclear terror. Our evidence is like to Harvard professor and says that nuclear semi-cycle through barrels of marijuana. Yes, Chinese O-crime, their evidence is generic and doesn't assume how Chinese O-crime is a major powerhouse and it can conflict and corrupt states and which indexes the claim in their card, which says it's localized. Yes, Asia award. Their evidence says it's inclusive, free trade, has free trade and established processes, but doesn't assume the unique effects that Chinese O-crime can have in disrupting those processes, which takes out this foreign. So O-crime won't shift to other countries because our Rotella evidence says that the Chinese government is cracking down on all other funding sources other than marijuana, which means that marijuana is the key vector keeping it alive. They say if borders so weak, then terrorists ship nukes through other methods. That's wrong. It's only through the ground methods because you can't ship the nukes through planes. Terrorism is existential because they'll get nukes. Finish you. Lebal, we didn't read that. MBA, the re-highlight doesn't get them anything. It says that no one has challenged compounding claims for patent infringement, which means the status quo does not go their way. Yes, disease impact they cause change by collapse of society, ending geoengineering transfer, cognitive collapse of society, infection of all humans, that's bomb, and they've dropped cancer, which I know you think is silly, but it evolves fast once it hits metastasis, it's cascade, eliminating humanity, that's Dujon, and they drop masculine cartels, non-advantage one, they ignite conflicts that undermine global terrorists, causing a global arms race, T-substance. One would be the plan changes eligibility requirements that affect all trade based plantation American for Afghan and the counter term enemies and the support to seek and indicate inclusion within the limits for one Afghan concern people and talk to you for the two predictable their evidence about Canada law. Well, the Irish more predictable five functional limits for shooter and cap log details sample to overstress security at one from where the Afghans needs to plan for their implication and interpretation usually aperture to defense and offense in fairness to the only impact of clash eliminating educational matters strike off all performative contradictions of the right securities and that they ethical then refuse further investments into a two permanent build assault and shields reaching out ways. The bill is dying irreversible, which includes any alternative within life, including the K4. No link their evidence is about video games and depictions of Chinese characters, not about actual Chinese criminals. Imperfect or pragmatic solutions are good, especially when it comes to China. Figures 20 per section, links, evidence, such as scholars, solutions, typing West. No, we seek to combat oppression as to company pick or enemy. The calls for intensities and legitimate impressive regimes, return remaining values upon which so as rely because most evidence regarding to be self-defeated, should journalize with caution, clubs, champion. So ultimate appearances, rear centrist, and New York social think otherwise game of contest in colonial and colonial program and negative agenda. The critiques of coloniality hold strong appeal here, negation, talks about unlikely respire in terms of contribution to addressing problems publicly. You option neoliberals with patient will be more happy than critical self-to fulminate against us while embracing epistemological difference measures. This row 5 all can't solve A to the FB, floating picture of better possible leverage after policy and makes the all moving target index, version clash, devolution. One no internal ace, no spillover, a single instance of devolution doesn't institute a broad regime of governance across all states being not unique. The states already have a ton of power and suppose, to undertake that campaign. Section 2019. History cultural lineages will respect to not live up to promise set of counterfeiting effects that temper consequences if you reshape properly innovations about to increment to some disappear just by high tech. Take decades each to exaggerate effects today. Tech of under consumption to stabilize factors, media effects, geography, material power, domestic. Politics can't solve, that'll be below 3 permanent development solves the internal, or on the internal, the emerging tech regulations check any bad externalities, and there's no reason why devolution is key, or why devolution is able to solve before permanent planning the counterplan over other issues. Russell will send out a tax counterplan, especially textually and functionally competitive, that's key to Afghan. And then objectivity 6, adopt the plan by the counterplan policy formulation. The 7 perm to the counterplan, then the AFR interprets as perms and specify sequence, not time frame. Show refers to the future. Round 8 show looks to the future, considering possible future events. Devolution is received as global decline and fails for every ejection to get. In this the U.S. does not seem comparable to constitutional devolutions that states that have become interrelated to the global decline in the state. As a structure of the rising interest have stake in the IP of the state governance concern for saying it's independent for accountable decision making, no content, no doctrine, constraint, and natural government to authorize profit limitancy on level of liabilities to court might where their existence function entities could be through more ordinarily processes enable state governance processes imperfect presumption to firm constitution could be deployed to provide safety net against disruptive liabilities against state governance. Section Act 15 could alone stabilizing IR and the world of theoretical power disputes which character of America outside can see by impulse making it where free show has just been driven by efforts to render power predictable mature institution made priority people recognize way of policies made to rise and those will be created in a system that reduces abrupt news. I think this can confuse foreign observers, and if policymakers don't like the plan, then they won't like giving states the ability to do the plan, which leads to links to that benefit. Advantage travel. 1 permanent bill, 2 permanent counterplan, 3 permanent plan, and any comment of the plan's 4 permanent plan and the counterplan over other issues. Russell will send out that text. 5 links to that benefit because it creates controversial marijuana policy. 6 presume any plan without an advocate doesn't solve. They analytically assert it does. So we'll analytically assert it doesn't. And 7 lawful use prevents IT use. Broken to 21 description 4G trademark habit includes CBD. At time the file of CBD was illegal. TBD prospect by previous decision of goods to markets intend to be use lawful. There is no intent to use and legalization. Triggers violates the NCIB, which destroys all international law, causing exchange. They didn't read advocate, so we get a straight term without. And then advocate either, and the third plank does the plan because removing the private cause of action includes removing lawful use standard. Non-unique development is high now, no spillover. IP is not key to all development, test of other factors. No development impact. Apollo 28. Auto development prognosis is much worse than picture many LCs, zero interesting industrial access. There's no return. Reports of racial controversy in China, Latin America, Southern Europe, Middle Africa, experience of financial predatory unemployed. New targets interventions with
who believes in free trade and democratization. They have no answer in abolishing IP causes extinction because IP is key to military secrets which otherwise cause extinction and key to hegemony. Injunction. 1. No internal A, no civil rules instead of training the executive doesn't institute a broad regime of governance. B. Non-unique. The court doesn't restrain the executive and squirrel. C. No impact, no actual scenario for extinction. Which means that we get new answers 2 can't solve because the executive will say no and the PTO will try to circumvent the court's mandate. That's our 1 AC because evidence 3 perm to both for permanent plan and the counterplan over other issues. Text insert 5 perm to the counterplan. And 6 adopt the plan via the counterplan's policy formulation. 7 perm to the counterplan. Then the PTO action is key because for 2. This word of language is purpose requirement. PTO ignore the land mass. PTO self notice this text. TOC such as strong for the lawful use elsewhere. PTO's recently misconstrued strongly sucking text. PTO suggests that lawful use detected by common law. PTO asserted 1 never require rights to wrong ask review agencies. First, condos of voters still solves 1 straight trace maximizes in-depth classroom education. 2 fairness. You can't be best ideas ever imagined. Perm to both altering the Constitution deals to the counterplan, to the plan, ratification leads to that benefit. It's unprecedented and functionally it's the federal government to the plan, the slows and certain research. 18 commission for the response, no body of authority to settle disputes opening process, if pressure, legal uncertainty, there's no process application of Congress restraint. The mandate certainty is key to forwarding cannabis industry, which is our 1C evidence.
Did you say evidence is on the?
I did. Conco is a vote for Afghan, there's no solvency deficit. The constitutionally requiring the there's no cause of action for state trademarks that allows rampant infringement in other states. That's garbage, can't solve the black market, interstate, and international policing fails. That's Screamer, Texas. On the advantage counterplan, perm do the plan and abolish all other instances. Texas. Perm do both a logical policymaker, and they could also do the plan and the DA produces logical debates about what should happen. Agency actually shields and links the politics to evidence of full racial for making that legislature of among staff and success corporate even if doing so blue status political blue standing goals. It may make sense to give an interest to awkward tax bringing competition to rebrand for high level objectives because review of high house augments of operational realities, but are unaware of negative effects. Trump doesn't use PC because he can do whatever he wants. We'll pass space pressure for 21. 11 differences sort of typically at this point in time, so some have agreed to same word for me, they do not have been introduced for stricter cuts. Mark, cost stable, powers fails, and it's bad paragraph 25. No purpose to ensure adversaries cannot strengthen their returns. Navy operations come at a cost of strong and weaken or service least structural rank concerns for ships irrelevant to the returns to building is not enough. Ready for sustained concept capture, but allowing people ready to make structural readiness a nightmare.
You said for text?
Yeah.
Okay. We just like a team, condo, things in the K, con, anything else?
That's it.
I want to talk about the advantage counterplan. I guess the straight turn, like you said, cause extinction. Like, can you explain this?
Yeah, so 2 of them. First is that it violates the NCIB, which violates international precedent that the U.S. has proposed treaties that it will not legalize marijuana.
I guess I want to ask a better question. Is this like external to development, or is this also just like a straight turn?
It's a DA to the counter.
It's DA to counter. Okay.
It's a DA to legalizing marijuana, and then the second one is about abolishing all IP or trademarks.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure. Thanks. I want to go back to advantage 1. You said your answer to other countries. You said China is cracking down domestically. If China is cracking down domestically on other uses, why does that solve crime?
No, China is cracking down on everything except for marijuana because the problem is that Chinese crime is growing marijuana in the United States.
Well,
the state of Oklahoma alone
yes,
is
wait, why is the US
$44 billion
I guess a better question would be
to Chinese crime.
What I meant is like, why is the US key to Chinese crime firms for weed?
Yeah, because believe it or not, Chinese nationals are growing marijuana within the United States to fund Chinese crime. In Oklahoma
and you have to
alone,
win that marijuana in the US in Oklahoma is the only thing that funds crime?
well, no, because that's what's propelled them to
That's propelled
a major
Okay, well,
local
other
powerhouses
countries-
are evidence.
Other countries also have marijuana illegalized, so like, why wouldn't those firms just go to other countries?
Because those countries have robust systems of development and commercialization.
What card says this?
Huh?
What
Okay,
card
well,
says
like,
this?
okay, so those countries have like firms that sell marijuana, which means there's no incentive to buy from the black market in those countries.
Well,
But
other
since
countries
the
have
U.S.
trade-
has a patchwork of regulation.
Other countries have trademarks illegalized. I guess what evidence draws this distinction that you see?
Or when I see evidence, and this is just obvious, people don't want to
No,
buy from the
you don't
black
have
market
it.
in other countries because other
I want to
countries
go to
legalize,
the
but they do in the U.S. because it's not legalized.
injunctions counterplan. I guess the PTO key card, what's like the warrant? Is it just like that PTO needs to start the process, or it just needs to be enforced by the PTO?
PTO will not do the plan if told by someone else.
Okay, so it's just the same. Okay, sounds good. Politics. I guess this Trump doesn't use, or no, not this agency action shields. Where you think this card is predictive about like legislative processes, i.e., like this card just generally says that like it has core priorities. It doesn't trade off the core priorities, but where does this draw a distinction to like actual legislation?
Presidents may gladly trade off goodwill among staffer success on core priorities, even if doing so impedes less politically salient goals.
Yeah, this seems to be in the context of like agency administrative goals, i.e.
Yes,
tariffs.
i.e.
Why does
the
that
president-
apply to like
when the
congressional legislation?
When the president has an agency do something, that means that the agency takes the blame and that they that blame is concentrated toward them and not toward the president.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's definitely
Yeah, I got it.
and can you, and also,
Yeah, I think I already have everything on.
okay, just save those two things in the file.
You want me to type out examples before there's stuff or just that? Okay. I'm sending it to you right now. So you should have violations or something. Should I do this refreshing the DM? Or the like an evil ones, like doing this means like violent.
Oh,
Should that work? Like, yeah, just keep it simple.
he's on that side.
Great, great, and chat.
This was a long simulation.
Yeah. You only want me to do that, right?
Yeah, you said you do some other stuff, I should actually do that.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, I'm sending you that real quick. Okay, that's fine. Okay, is everyone in front of me?
Yeah, I still haven't gotten it, but you can go ahead.
Okay, I'll just hit the right one. It's the reverse, or I guess the injunctions counterclaim, then, the first advantage.
Marijuana.
Yeah, the marijuana advantage, and the
Overreach.
overreach.
Injunctions 1, 2.
Yes, sir.
I'll let you know when we get it. Oh.
Are you good? Oh, okay, is everyone good? Oh, my bad, sorry.
The counterclaim so. Oh, sorry. Were you saying something? My bad. Okay. The counterclaim sells 100% of the case. It bans the claim through district courts, injunctions, never forgets the after triggers cascades of litigation over nationwide injunctions results. Better litigation results and SCOTUS ruling against constitutional validity of nationwide injunctions. No deficit. The counterclaim grants cert to those cases with incentivized litigation. Drop presumption. No one error answers. Then block the space. Explicit on 2C amendment steps 1 and C tactics states that turn solvency results in patent litigants engaging in forum shopping and results in patent trolls insurance the case. That also applies to trademarks. Now the nationwide injunctions are external to the government and humanity allows the courts to destroy the very existence of agencies, which is key to quick remedies of disease, market collapse, corporate capture, biodiversity collapse, warming, and democracy. Core remedies are political and expert, which eliminates any impact. Terms and terms implementation of this Emerson evidence. They had to isolate why particular launch of those scenarios are bad or implicate the solvency of those launch of those scenarios. Yes, we get terminal impacts, and it implicates their own terminal impacts. And negative destructive strategies of reducing external risk were way better than constructive ones. I think I took this out the dog, but I'll send it out. We're USP 6. Adding detailed research to story less probable human psychology pay more than people make pay more than attack warfare by China than attack considered any source of science scenarios instead of defense is more useful because it's more vague. The more valuable would be strategy study. Humanity get hard to extinguish the specific scenarios, misdirecting investments, impossibility scenarios. People underestimate conjunctive probabilities and underestimate destructive probabilities. Doing extinction destructive as a result of any measures of some which of none. Force law. Yes, spill over. 1 SCOTUS decision likely decisions that SCOTUS rules are that nationwide injunctions are unconstitutional. 2 spill over. The counterclaim sells through precedents like almost every major Supreme Court case in history. Ray 20 is worth publishing how the system used to work before national injunctions there. So the decisions take around the word the way the one case ruled out way through that the precedent. No defense. 1 administrative agencies are good. That was done entirely above. They conceded several terminal impacts, but it definitely causes extinction. We live in the colder when we live in a vulnerable world. Disease active ways is weak financial systems, accidents, or attacks on systems, high vulnerability systems, which life depends on single mutation away from causing the pandemic and administration of devices made to save vulnerability, later strategy of preparedness for disasters, blackout service attacks. They drew on expert coordination depending across agency systems that requires human life and nuclear administrative remedies, vast range of functions of welfare and economic industrial revolution and powers in the administrative state. Now, there's no risk of impact being dumped. National injunctions exist and are increasing. That's not take out the impact. Once go, national injunctions are relatively recent. Legal tool has been rapidly accepted. Now, full scale up triggers the impact. There's also no risk of uniqueness. Nationwide injunctions are rising now. 1 national injunctions are reduced in the development, but have been accelerating in the past 10 years. This will look evidence considered below for reference and more at back in break 18. Go to course assume the powers of the international injunctions court is legally ruled out. The international injunctions court should curtail the practice. Do both fails. 1 severance. The counterpunch strikes down the after both is incoherent severance voting. I issue for Afcondo and Negron after legal process explanation was not explicit in the 2C cannot be in the 1 error results in sandbagging. 2 is illegal. The counterpunch bans the plan durable if these injunctions is ignored. Legal counterpunch are better makes the being negative possible because they can be out through the law and erase things like preemption. 3 does not solve the eternal DP or not. There would not be any appeal to SCOTUS from the PTO if they're doing the plan anyways, means that the ruling would not happen, and they can also the internal net benefit. 4 IP injunctions are bad as adjacent to the plan results in forum shopping, which is versus liquid evidence inserted below for reference. 5 news mootness implementation not declaration of event is a change in circumstance that gets the appeal dismissed new and element T24 mootness results from change in the circumstances of the pendency of the appeal case's dismissal for mootness, which the change of circumstances prevented a decision appeals that dismissed for mootness during the pendency since the brewery violated the code. The appeal division have dismissed the appeal as moot, noting petitioners made no effort to prevent the construction during the appeal. Per
to the counterplan service or links voting issue draft on it when the counterplan bans and can classify answers to do both to Congress protection or Christopher the Title 21 Act protection or enforcement protection relates to statutes of a country's legislative framework interpretation of judiciary and other enforcement agencies as bounded by the legislative north framework may never be a rule of judiciary. 2. IPR the legal rights held by nature by Sharia. 11 intellectual property rights refer to legal rights. The counterplan cannot be legal because money. 2. The difference between legal rights and constitutional rights. Legal rights are recognized in states or statutes and by the law passed by legislative constitutional rights are guaranteed by the Constitution covered by the Supreme Court. Vote negative for Louis Brown expanded past legislation only 2,000 cases that permits manipulation of time period ruled by the gender rates for core generics 3. Should certainty should is certain summer tonight for should is more than terribly same as most of the laws immediately effective as much as the feature offer orders to give effect to every part of the text as it is obvious. Resolved in its clarity. Oxford 20. Resolved is firmly determined to do something. Anything else makes being negative possible. Act can always say the act is ruled back so but dishas can always if you determine serve would not be topical. And the show went on permutation to the counterplan. Immediacy will be on the delay term. And now the next term is other issues. The those counterplans only need to be functionally competitive. One ground A topic bias. There's an infinite. There's very very low risk of dishas. There's no links to anything on this topic. Counterplans are heat check rules or tiny cases in the counterplan verbal fiat as an app crush, especially when there's 3 subsets and infinitely many apps. B structural bias choosing the topic of debate. Infinite prep terms in the last speech all outweighs C controversy cross counterplans and advice controversial offset. Intercross counterplans voting negative was debates after the strong both sides and trade best debates. 2 textual topic competition is C. Counterplans must be both functionally and sexually competitive. Apps must be both functionally and sexually topical, which requires readable whereas apps 3 predictability. The resolution calls for debates over actions arbitrary rules destroy the debate and makes the planning on competitive. Erickson 3 each topic can say that agent doing acting US should urge action days entire debates rather than something else speech occur. 4 word games just by scrum that this mean ground and the other than benefits so much intrinsicness as fake and arbitrary proven by people only go for it against the process but they go for against man counterplans. Well now defense 1 other terms self advocates decision making theory check 2 inevitable impact on states advantage counterplans are germane opportunity cost 3 fairness outweighs the only way to determine whether the version of debate is more educational is fair and education which means it's a prerequisite. It also does not solve custom from permutation to both the term the term creates complications and most of the texts are also in the context of IP so ensures they get struck down. The delay permutation severs immediacy required by should and resolve the should and reverse is subjective and immediate. Approach 73 probably subjective and should you should do that is employed in present indicative synonymous with ought should is auxiliaries of time as past implement as indications of mood. Go back up to the perm adopting via formulation. 1 first the card is arbitrary and regressive. 2 cooperation pressure etc. They have deficits which all check back. There's no definition of what it means to be fiated but you can read deficits to those and we do not durably fiat the adoption of the plan so there's certainly deficits but the permutation also fails for all the reasons to vote this and also it's about every argument under permutation to the counterplan because the text just does not make sense. Say no also is nonsensical. Of course, rule in favor of banning nationwide injunctions. Framing issue the evidence is not about whether the Supreme Court likes nationwide injunctions, only about individual, and is not even in the context of injunctions or how the PTO would respond. 1 constitutionally, there's no legal or constitutional standing for nationwide injunctions. 2 evidence is only in the context. It's not even get to the context of courts. Specific evidence is served below for references. 2 justices they don't like nationwide injunctions. Chief Justice Roberts hates them, which is also ensured below for reference, which ensures that the court says yes. If the courts say yes, then they can grant punishments. The holdouts will be met with jail time and litigation. 17 that has no precedent in American history. The government has refused to honor a court order. There is no non-compliance, you can issue a contempt that would have opposed sanctions, I should say the form of jail or fines that would be hearing, and people could be held in contempt which ensures that the PTO is forced to comply, otherwise they get jailed. Now go to case, there's no AMR impact, A, sanitation and vaccine solved, B, is confined to hospitalized patients, prices in the worst case scenario, this is with evidence, 2, limited scope max, 10 million die by 2050, that's a drop in the bucket compared to our impact, 3, intervening actors, the international community is actually be involved in developing new antibiotics or therapies or international action bills to feed the rest of the world as an all cause, and APR will get close to extinction. Kara, 17 APR making 10 million in debt, so there are reasons to be hopeful. Governmental and private foundations are very actively involved in finding new solutions, cooperation between national and local health agencies, they prevent future cases of resilience and public even with the best policy, but there's no clear light at the end of the tunnel. There's no army of equal that will rise up to the human race. Antibiotic alpha will be gentle. They only answer this was not assume new developments, but we do not know what those new developments are absent a warrant. And so we get new answers if they make one in the 1 AR. Now there's no risk of an O crime impact, it's localized, and there's no correlation to state failure. There's evidence to avoid it because they need markets to still go since special evidence. Also found that evidence 2 years old and not escalated. Cartels are dead now. Stewart 17 has suffered has tracked cartels for over a decade. Groups have fractured and fallen apart, no longer luxury, but the smaller networks Mexico is and it can't escalate. Cardenas 11. So here, yeah, that was all answered above. Now the letting us survive nuclear war stuff fails. I'm not going to read a card here because A, it's illogical. Most of the weed would get destroyed from the impact even if it cools radiation. So it would make Earth impossible. B, their card says it took 5 years to clean up. People would die long before that from a nuclear war. And other implications and other strikes. This smuggling stuff, there's no impact. Not going to read a card because it's just stupid. A, there's no motive. There's no reason why terrorists want to get in the first place or move across borders. B, access nukes don't grow on trees. There's no idea that the idea that people could come walk in from Mexico and just blow up the US is nonsense. They don't have a card that says that there's been accessibility. So there's an accessibility of getting beginning here. Second is the column board evidence. It says that the pathways for terrorists to destroy civilization are low. It requires expertise, resources, and it's far beyond state-sponsored organizations. Now go to the second advantage, no disease infections and lethality trade-off permitting widespread classic race proof civilization recovered from black plague in COVID vaccines. Quarantines and institutions check back. That's the word evidence. Worst case, people hide on islands, bunkers, preventing total extinction and keeping enough cell lives to prevent inbreeding. There will be a couple cards on that one.
Different cross-sections?
Yeah.
Okay, so first we'll walk through the counterclaim. So it issues a nationwide injunction to do the plan, and the court strikes that down.
No, it issues a nationwide injunction to not do the plan, and then the court strikes that down. Well, okay.
That does the plan?
So, what do you mean?
So then the court striking down that nationwide injunction does the plan.
So then the court, which court? The district court or the Supreme Court?
Supreme Court.
Okay, so say the question one more time.
Okay, so just like walk me through the process of this counterclaim. Like this text is like 4 sentences and a kind of like diddly squat. Like,
I don't think it's
Just like walk me through the steps of the
the process is exactly what the text says.
walk me through the like steps of the counterclaim.
Okay, the first step.
Without looking at your computer.
Okay, the first step is
Without
that
looking at your computer.
the first step is that agencies say that we should not, or agencies say that we should do the plan. Then a district court says that we should not do the plan. Then the Supreme Court says, then the third plank says the Supreme Court should take up that case and determine whether we should or we should not.
Okay, so like, why at all is that competitive? Like,
Why
how
is
does-
it not competitive? It doesn't fiat the plan.
Okay, so this competes off of we don't fiat the plan, and that's why it's competitive.
No, it competes off of what the 2NC said it competes off of,
Okay,
which is
so
certainty, immediacy,
let's talk about
factor,
let's talk about the net benefit.
and the.
You said that all the justices in the Supreme Court don't like nationwide injunctions. If they don't like nationwide injunctions, then why will they apply them to the executive?
Doug, the second plank is the nationwide
I
injunction.
know. So your the story of your internal net benefit is that nationwide injunctions will be used on the executive, which will check their ability and check the ability of the admin state. If the Supreme Court doesn't like them in the first place, then why will those be used to check the admin state?
What do you mean? Like, the Supreme Court not liking them is what the counterplan.
I agree, but you have said in the status quo, the admin state will fail because nationwide injunctions will be ruled upon. But then you've read evidence that says the Supreme Court does not like nationwide injunctions.
No, it's that
Resolve this-
nationwide injunctions are happening now, i.e. a district court a district court can file a nationwide injunction and block things across the
Okay, so if the
US.
Supreme Court dislikes nationwide injunctions so much, then why aren't they taking up any of those cases for writ?
I mean, the counterplan
No,
creates.
I'm talking about
momentum.
the SQO. Like, if they dislike them so much, then why aren't they taking up those district court cases?
Probably because they're doing other things. The counterplan takes it up and sets a precedent that they can take up nationwide injunctions.
Okay, the affirm do both, I'm like a bit confused, so how does it sever the affirmative? Like I don't get why this would ban the plan if the district court is just overturning the first part of your counterplan.
Because
Because your counterplan text says the district court should overturn the said policy in your counterplan, not the plan.
okay, yeah, it's because the second plank. Okay. You don't need to prep for this. Just restate the question in more simple terms. Are you sure?
Okay. The one norm second process, I just wanna confirm something.
Wait, you already prep?
Yeah, we'll use prep.
Oh, yeah. You said Trump doesn't use PC, was that a card or?
I analytically said that PC doesn't apply to Trump because everyone will do whatever he says.
Okay, and you didn't read eating this part, right?
I did.
No, you did.
Yeah.
Sorry to confirm or?
I already sent it. Oh, no, good. I was just confirming something, cause I thought you read it hard, you're good, yeah.
What's the order? I don't get it.
What the law's giving me, I guess against you. Security K. Injunctions counterclaim.
Okay,
I'll just-
let me.
Oh, no, yeah. Sorry.
Security K injunction county plan.
The Concon counterclaim, the development DA / advanced counterclaim,
Development, yep,
devolution counterclaim,
yep.
tax cuts. All this. Right.
Something like this.
These scores just sent out, right? Or just sent out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my
Yeah.
fault. Yeah. They are.
I'm just
So yeah, I think the 2 and C dot was also missing some
Oh, yeah.
impacts at the top.
Yeah, I'll send it out.
Yes.
Sorry, I need to finish this. Sorry. Was it just?
It was
I think it was the
included.
district.
Okay.
It was the very first start.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Just
And then
one.
there was one more, right?
Yeah.
It was the, like, okay, I found it.
Yeah, and it's at 9:50, I'm at 10 seconds east, so it's
Can you check if
3:40.
Collier's in the doc? I
Yeah, I
said.
got you.
How much drug do you want to
3:40 bucks. I accidentally said 9:50.
Collar,
but
like
it's-
COLLIER.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's what. Okay, sorry about that. I sent that. We'll wait for you to get that.
You said you're good?
No,
Yeah.
I haven't gotten them yet. I still haven't gotten them.
You still haven't done it?
So your files are just taking a while to load.
Yeah, last one was.
Oh, here we go.
Just let me know when you get it. Okay, 40?
It's downloading.
You want some cards and tools?
No, they're sending it to us.
Found it.
So you're reading the 2 and C parts first and then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good enough.
Like, okay, so.
Yep.
Right.
The risk is low 1% most recent evidence knowing 22 pandemic, the first extinction very small probability survey of the GCR conference should be median estimated 1 billion to be 5% or estimates probability extinction rate from 100 years to be 0.01% disease and cause more.
Read this.
Okay, transmissible cancer is limited and would never spread. Mr. In COP16, transmissible cancers be limited by immune recognition, physical barriers to spread. And the cancers have evolutionary pressure strategies, evasion of immune recognition, ability to metastasize. Challenges for transmissible cancer transmission do occur in special settings. Transmission would not be likely to occur in immunocompetent people. Now, security can concede the burn theory is a research argument, not team. Also, one the framework in fairness has an impact which has defense and conduct injunctions cannot counter. We get what we did. Against that, new house, one next life, you can make most strategic action before fighting ahead of time.
Not against class.
Or against new plans. New plans, yeah. One, Netflix, they can take most street app and provide ahead of time against every thing. Two, after structure, after close, forces point sees that but necessary. Insufficient three, argumentation to risk first, context, key to test new position. Four, negation theory, reject non-racial theory. Its argument is not variable for first principles. If they can debate much more fair, but that's inferior regards to Q is number, case T links D's. Links future results offense, so feels links all offense, inferior arbitrary. And turns research the force principle process. We not link the other theory, concede reasonability from theory. T, convention, counterpoint, concede the firm theory, use reject argument, not team, development, DA, concede the firm, reject argument, not team, also swap them. There's no impact in development which gets rid of the link turn. You can't insert impacts on link turns on that card. It's not external devolution copy. Concede the firm theory, use reject argument, not team, do not get new concepts in the 1 year politics. Naval power ways best stats and demonstrate defined capacities directly correlated with military activities with Russia, China, India, in Iran over Arctic Mediterranean and SCS waters, each of which draws in great powers as capability that passage. A shipping decimates that by restricting the scope of the second and first phase LE time frame because it's instantaneous in the mere perception of declining capacity. Triggers the link. And first phase 1, Ukraine and Asia war prevents hospitals from escalating in the first place. And it's critical to stopping transportation of drugs by allowing checks against that. 2, connects body. There's no incentive for federal adoption. And more ships allows us to contain escalation and use of those and spread of those diseases in the first place. Extend the compound itself if they try to extend under the straight turn in the 1 year. Now, the link is intrinsic. The app must go through the process, and we read evidence that they will kill the person after and legislation or opportunity cost to it, even if the rule judge is policymaker. Considering the political process is good for education, policymakers speak which policy they plan. At certain times, intrinsic arguments are bad for debate. 1, infinitely aggressive. All these be solved by infinite actors to the ground that was above. The link was dropped. 2, only contest that HC spillover, not plan on popularly. IP reform crushes the agenda. Any reform that reforms follow diverse entities with competing interests who will lobby in opposition to paying agencies rarely touch IP reform because they know the PC necessary to get it right with crowd out other for priorities of 20. Burke and Lemley framing issue the perception alone causes bias. Trump ran in 2024 on stopping crime, and the plan is a complete 180 from that because it looks like he's trying to help marijuana owners. Agencies don't shield. One, they must be Congress that was the 2. 2, unpopular executive action during PC. Congress will publicly mobilize pressures against the president. If they go against the preferences, questioning agenda, that's because it was dropped in the 2AC, 1C red card, not having an answer to it. So you should strike out any new applications, one year. I prefer it. It cites political science research. The record about the MPD is not prescribed congressional or legislative action, which is done in cross. 3, the scope of the link takes out. That was bug. Plan is so unpopular. Congress moves against it. 4, backlash executive action spills over and undermines agenda. Question 17, Congress is not actually in opposition legislators and security calculations about executive presidents anticipating action. Obviously, fear resulting backlash could prevent them from achieving other aspects of their agenda. 5, Trump gets the blame for HC action clause. 18, president's recognition that whatever the outcome he will settle the political blame, the public equate the president for British attack and be accepted this. Now, Trump does not use his PC, does not apply because he spotted the union alone kills the bill, but he does once the evidence is hyper-specific that he's making push past the bill. And 2C did not have a warrant, so this is all relevant. I'm not going to read it in cards because 2C did not read one either. Did not just get to the search stuff without any internal link work. Now, passage is inevitable now. Trump is making a push to overcome opposition. In order for Democrats to pass the bill, it's the first order of business. Williamson, 425. Texas will be first order of business. Lawmakers return from Easter incorporating the attorney will slow down. There's a white agreement. The House maintains 21% rate on corporate income. House it's less certain Republicans only have 3 votes as a spirit in the Senate. Reconciliation means only simple majority required, but their evidence does not have a warrant. It's not predictive of the future. It's only prescriptive, which means you should prefer ours. And their evidence also does not have any clause in the first place. Earlier, July 4th, July 4th, 322. Secretary Benson said Texas could be complete as of July 4th. House could pass legislation by Memorial Day. The entire bill will be balanced. Early July is sequencing the tariffs. The tax bill. The Senate is working yards. 422. Because for sure working with Republican senators to extend the taxes. Also, a large increase in pending to pass a resolution with reconciliation. Does get paying for tax increases that forces them to say yes. The point of 421 does refuse the deal. Republicans could easily pay for resulting tax increases than if they cut Dems out of the process. Now they say that the defense over the impact returns for first stats. Our card cites them. That was above the card. Their card does not have a warrant for the impact return. Does not allow new warrants in 1 yard. Real power caps global conflict escalation crossing. 22 conflict is naval. It's great power. Grand attacks. Black Sea Mediterranean homers. Blonda is SCES concepts for state naval character. Apparent Asia. Market apparent Asia. Naval power works. The perception of for Colombo 24 naval power matters today more reliance on the sea apparent attack realization. Moscow Beijing. Tehran maritime is a pressure point with political value. Chinese authority understand naval adopting for supremacy in major war against Chinese seas, Taiwan, or beyond. Naval these matter. Allies actively debating on how to invest.
Market actively, allies actively invest.
7.
Yeah. One. Yeah, makes sense.
first advantage, second advantage, the injunctions counterplan, the constitutional convention counterplan, or
It was on injunctions too.
yeah, it was. I guess they moved. It was on injunctions, so never mind. Injunctions counterplan politics.
So we're not going to conflict?
Correct. Excellent.
1, 2, injunctions politics.
Correct.
Is it just one doc or 2 docs?
Two.
Mine
Yours
is
is on politics.
Yes, but give me a sec to compile them and then.
Sure.
Okay, 1, 2, injunctions, politics,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just, is it just case doc?
For politics, yeah, I have a doc
I
as well.
see, okay, I just got that.
Let me download it. I'm good.
It's downloading, just give me a minute. Alright,
Dropped Mexican probe outweighs U.S.-Mexico bilateral cooperation against the perception of crime at the border, signals uncertainty to allies, causes assurance collapse, which makes them acquire nukes, that causes nuclear conflict gets had, convert for reverse causality and time frame. When it sees no, since the plan instantly spurs bilateral cooperation, which is completely external to all the crime that benefits in China, which diffuses threats. Now, that completely external, now the defense applies to stuff about smuggling. It's not about cooperation, it's not about cooperation at the border, because the impact is not about smuggling. Nukes is not about crime either, and certainly not about China. This stuff about intent or no motive is irrelevant to whether cooperation this also arms twisting. Advantage two. Disease outweighs drop knock-on effects on geoengineering the stratosphere, and cognitive collapse also result from disease which are completely independent of infection, but infection also causes teaching that's bond, it causes mutation for larger incubation time to overcome burnout because everyone's infected before everyone dies. COVID is not thumb or bond evidence is like increased globalization, it's increased over the time, and the islands cause inbreeding if only a few people survive, plus enough to outweigh the DA. Injunctions. The benefit is stupid. Context proves it's not just not doing kind of is enough because it's not used nationwide injunctions. The supposed solves that was causing. Their evidence agrees. Roberts not only hates nationwide injunctions, but he's stopping them. Now we're yellow and Levick 24 word. And now we switch to these hard schemes special out. Actually, inserted for reference. They inserted stuff too. The PTO says no to the counterplan. Nor about any sexual sport. That's Migos. Empirics Peru. Migos 22. No list of the history claim with the PTO. Dropped the right sources. Side rule. Observes the indication of the PTO loose. Side land McDonald. Nor serve Migos. 22 all use has been such changes will scrutiny. Court slides the questions. How do you other grounds left unchallenged? The requirement is change. Defense of legends requirement this. Has ever Georgia justification door on the authority do both. The counterplan is not fiat. The plan or the government does not ban the plan. It rules the plan unconstitutional in the second part. It only rules the counterplan unconstitutional, not the plan, which means it's legal. It's not. It does solve the internal because it still issues certain and denies the plan other things unconstitutional. Now the IP injunctions are good, so there's no turns case or independent TA or presumption. We obviously get new answers since it was unwarranted. Any logical or evidence about patents. The law just asserts this applies to trademarks without a warrant, without any evidence. Do the counterplan. If you ask the plan in the second plane, so it's not the last plane, so it's not uncertain. It means I only need to win. That the only thing I need to answer is agent restricted protection. Includes or actually give me the agency's card. Give me here. The perm other issues. Counterplan supposed to be via text and function. The perm that does not, so it's legit. Prefer one objectivity function number here arbitrary not hawk. Only text provides an unchanging basis to assess counterplan combination. 2 app ground function alone. Leaves the app sitting duck consults lay break and constants all removed functions of the plan. Now they say net ground are interrupt solves and switch and error spillover. Politics word IP back with the laws. They that answers the first supplement structure. They strike by the block and they get more prep by so they say perm. The textual topicality TA is wrong and stupid. This T is not the equivalent of firms. Terms determine opportunity cost of the plan. T determines whether the plan fails to fall within the scope of the resolution, even if the right they're distinct to solve their debatability of the sexual topicality. Also, it requires the entire resolution negative to the ground and picks check extra topical function. They say predictability is not it is resolution of sexual compatibility is a method to read the resolution. Number theory is good. Key check. I fiat in international fiat enters. Erickson word scramble is wrong. Right text. Solves your model and counterplan could be just based off this text or to the counterplan. They say other firms check that's wrong because this counterplan fiat's the plan. They say fairness outweighs it's irrelevant because we're going for fairness impact. Now the the card that I'm looking for before PTO. It permits executive actions or 20 protection of IPR system of rights and mental rights for issuing a realization of rights individual with legalization considered two types of mechanism of protection through the executive PTO is the PTO issues of trademarks qualifies as the means of protection patents for 18 PTO issues patents as the means of protection of IPR for invention US PTO provides patent protection for devices PTO is the former retailer for PTO is the former issuing IP protection politics.
And also Christianopoulos is about domestic.
Christianopoulos is about domestic, it's not about domestic things. It's a domestic topic, so for domestic definitions. Politics. Two votes is holding uniqueness counterclaim perception is stumped because their evidence says the earliest is June 4th. Their impact is not true in the case naval power. It's about China in the ECS and SES, not about the border. So it's also overall resilient. No recent tax source regime, no recent national or recent perception is important, and it's not key to disease. Shipping can be done by planes or other means. So they have to solve. Now, uniqueness tax cuts won't pass disagreements between chambers on spending cuts amount to overwhelmingly uniqueness. Medicaid cuts are mandatory by most of the GOP won't support it. It takes months to figure out the earliest. That's Patrick. I'll finish the card 421. 421 and the Senate. Some practice started this where one is made. They take over the big fight over billions of dollars difference to negotiate with the House and what gradually causes constantly kept medicated cuts. Dedicated medical little pension concerns are politically sensitive topics won't. The undead the card Williams says bad Williams the insertive reference where it's really speculative and for March insertive reference bureaus it says it's unclear the bureaus 22 that it's unclear how Congress will reconcile the cost of spending your business nor was wrong it's pure speculation and proves our uniqueness argument. Now the agencies shield the link the no link agencies shield political backlash. Media is lumped irrelevant. It's not a victim since no one knows about the PTO or evidence that they say the legislators influence the executive that it's not the so it's the other way around. So their cards don't apply agencies say blame it doesn't attend voters and claim that agencies represent unresponsive bureaucracies. Market bureaucracies.
Okay, we need the rebuttals.
Oh wait,
Those were in here.
Oh, no, no, no.
You're gonna send the top piece.
Three how much?
340. 3 times 7. The cost of stuff, yeah. Yeah. Oh wait, no.
Can you also do this?
What do you want to do? I'll make this right. And then. Okay, I'll try to do that, but I'll do this first, I think.
first advantage and the second advantage. Does anyone need that? Okay, great. You said you're good, right? Great.
The counterplan conceived the permanent success competition not going for it's obvious I didn't know it's obvious that I didn't know what this counterplan does. Just that. Its charge dies to maintain naval power. The one he sees launches of haikus without terminals, so even a tiny risk is switched that way. It draws in every power. Russia, China, India, Egypt, Iran have all experienced the rise in maritime disputes directly correlates to domestic naval power. H of which is sufficient to spill over into fully fledged warring draws in great powers. It's coverly evidence. Even if it's illogical, adversaries perceive it as necessary to make escalatory decisions predicated off of it, which assumes any defense. And the plan trades off. Passing reconciliation is critical to rebuilding domestic capacity through massively increasing funding to bolster the industry. It outweighs on time frame. There's no calculus done in the 1 AR just defense. So you know that you have to default negative. The impact is instant, whereas the scenarios are massively thumped by the past 10 years. Case is not fast enough. There's no warrant for why it's intact. Terms case was dropped. 1, marijuana. The scenarios are all a non-starter. They spotted us. The naval power prevents their internal relation being triggered in the first place by serving as a conflict dampener. They spotted us. The second line warrant, i.e. they answered the first but not the second. That increased shipping allows us to contain crime in the first place, which sacks the entirety of case because it allows us to track and contain shipments of criminal activity, which prevents the scope of transportation. You should ask yourself why Mexico goes nuclear or builds arms in the first place, even if it is prolific. The 1 AR does not have a word for how it goes existential or what threshold it gets to. So let's come first. Second, overreach. Drop. Naval power enables federal adoption and allows us to contain the scope of disease spread in the first place. Nuke war and it triggers knock-on effects from pandemics too, so it never actually gets to the threshold of being existential. Uniqueness. It is a crush. The 1 AR did not read a card, inserted a bunch of re-highlights without warranting them out in the first place. Strike any new core extrapolation. We get our insertions of re-highlightings because we had them explicitly warranted out, and we just had this to defend what the card said. You cannot say Williams is bad as a reason why you get to insert a re-highlighting. So you should strike it off your flow, and I'm not going to answer it. Passage is certainly coming now. Trump is getting Republicans and Democratic senators, and Trump is getting Republicans and Democratic senators on board by having the pressure to complete negotiations. That's all the 1 see evidence. Remember, the 1 AR read nearly 7 cards on this, all which take out uniqueness. As versus try or die, so uniqueness certainly controls the direction of the link. They drop the tax increases warrant. They refuse to do the deal. They'll get blamed for resulting tax increases. It incentivizes Democrats to get back on board. That's all the 1 AR evidence. Perception is not a warrant in the perception. Is not a warrant. Is perception. Defense does not have a warrant. They misconstrue the Rappaport evidence. Drop their card says it's completed as soon as July 4th. Glad that it will not be finished before then. That's the Rappaport evidence. It is prescriptive of the future. All members of the Senate and Republicans are getting on board. They're offsetting spending and using reconciliation to pass it in the first place. They drop the indict of their card. It's prescriptive, not descriptive, which you should use the frame for evaluating evidence. Hold the line and strike anything new in the 2 AR. Now the link was completely dropped. The plan is a complete 180. Marijuana is unilaterally unpopular, and IP requires a massive amount of resources. It trades off in circumvents the way policies exist. Now, the 1 AR's conceded that it overwhelms agencies over shield. They've completely and functionally dropped the indictment explicit in the 1 AR that the card is not about the legislative processes and that I'm sorry. Goddamn. Their process is not about legislative processes. The consistent evidence is exceptional, and they can see that you should cite since it cites political research and it's about MQD. It's not drive congressional action. It says that qualms concerning unilateral action translate into concrete opposition, and that unilateral action from Congress here resulting backlash it can prevent them from achieving other aspects. It ensures that agencies are always tied in tandem to Congress, and it cites research in the first place and says that conflicts alone spill over. Even a small risk is sufficient to outweigh because the impact is just so high. Now the next card is also terrible for all the reasons outlined above. Now go to case. The Mexican Prolo stuff was not dropped. We've read specific cards that say that Mexican cartels are already bunked and already don't have the funding and capacity to exist. There's no way for them to get to arms racing in the first place because they've already been cut off from American supplies. Their evidence is 10 years old. Does not say how they would get to arms races, what arms racing even happens, and how it's a threshold of extinction or nuclear war. Nuke terror defense definitely applies. The risk of terrorism is negative. You should ask yourself who these cartels are because there are you should ask who yourself these cartels or insurgencies are, what motive they have, and why they would strike nuclear weapons do not grow on trees. And the idea that some people can just walk in and create war is obviously nonsensical. But even if you believe there's an impact, there's lots of defense. A, cost. Obtaining nuclear capacity requires astronomical funding. Resources which have a 1-to-1 trade-off. B, expertise. It's limited. Most lack of basic education. You can never get to the risk of generating capacity for weapons that broadly cause extinction. Now go to All of this is not answered in the 1A. The 1A just asserted we dropped the impact, so I'm not going to do a lot more here. Now go to the second advantage. Go to the second advantage. Disease is empirically dumped, infectious, and lethality trade-off, preventing widespread collapse. All of their evidence all of the 1A just asserts that they have new spreads and there's a new transmissibility that's all priced in by ORD. It says that institutions check back and people would hide on islands and bunkers, which are drop warrants in the 1AR. Now, knock-on effects is not terminal because defense means we won't get there. Get there in the first place. So that does not be external evidence. The cancer stuff is also limited. By immune recognition and physical barriers, like i.e. evolutionary pressures and struggles and the evasion of immune recognition, which is all priced in by the Goff evidence. It's all priced in by the Goff evidence, and they even said that their scenarios passed in 2AC. So like, I would give it to them.
Advantage 1, marijuana.
Awesome.
I'm good.
You're voting affirmative for this debate because LASA needs to learn to flow. Arms racing outweighs and causes a quick cascade as security assurances around the world erode in response to U.S. uncertainty at the border. Only a strong signal of bilateral relations against crime at the border solves because it projects a signal of stability across the world that Snow and Haddock both drop in the 1C and 2C. Otherwise, allies and adversaries alike will feel user or loser pressures to escalate to a full-blown nuclear war. Framing issue for impact calculus. Tech overtune. LASA drop. The impact scenario in both the 1C and 2C is clear. In the 1AC, I know the tags, and it's not hidden, and it was clearly extended in the 2AC because I went back to the advantage to extend it, and it was clear in the 1AR because it was the top of the 1AR. That means it's at 100%, which means that any risk of defense or the DA outweighs. Don't read into the cards. Don't look more into this because our scenario is backed by qualified evidence, and LAS has waited until the 2R to answer this scenario. Strike off all of the new 2R arguments are new, which is unfair because it promotes sandbagging and causes slave-breaking debates, which is terrible for education. Even then, if you granted them, the 2R defense was actually terrible. They say the Mexican cartel, they read cards about Mexican Mexican trials lacking funding. Wrong. They did not read any of those cards in this debate, and those cards do not establish the signal and question of U.S.-Mexico bilateral relations, which are key to cracking down border on the crime, which means it's just critical to setting up perception. Even our evidence is not 10 years old; it's from 2017, which is very recent, and it's reinvigorated by Trump's uncertainty at the border, which means that allies and adversaries alike may be uncertain now, which means that reestablishing a signal of U.S. focus on the border is critical. They say that the nuclear terror defense applies. It's wrong. It's not a question of rogue actors developing these nukes, but rather about the nation states themselves developing the nukes, which means that they have the funding and the education because they can devote all resources to developing these arms, which means that they'll be able to develop the nuclear weapons to cause extinction. Politics. At what point is naval power going to erode enough to cause extinction? They're reading evidence from 3 years ago, but now telling you that now is somehow key. It's obviously asinine. If the bill passes in 2 months, under their uniqueness claim, that perception is inevitably thumped. There's no way to qualify the impact of tax cuts. Case turns the DA, not the other way, around hotspots like SES, Pakistan, India, and becomes uncertain of the U.S. security assurances because the border disputes existing now. Compare magnitude of the internal links. You know that border disputes cause huge uncertainty among allies and adversaries, which means they'll race and escalate those hotspots inevitably, but you don't know the threshold for naval power, which means you know that the internal link of the case outweighs turns case is wrong. Naval power is not a conflict dampener because it doesn't squash allies' fears of the U.S. not being able to meet its border commitments at the border, which, mind you, is all land and is no ocean, which means that naval power at the border is relevant. That is relevant to our scenario. It's not a question of tracking shipments because it doesn't. That's not how it works at the border. Because at the border, the Sinaloan cartel does not use naval ships to do so. They say this is also near zero. Medicaid fights obliterate passage to political nightmare. Moderates don't want Medicaid to be cut too much because they want people to have medicine, but fiscal hawks want to cut as much as possible, and they're refusing to acquiesce on any cuts to the big, beautiful bill. Those people are key to the bill. Even their evidence creates passages narrow in the House. Those moderates takes passage. That's fantastic. The law gives basically zero warrants for will pass. They might have 5 cards, but we have one very highlighted and very warranted one that beats every one they read. Their first one in our card explicitly concedes that and everything might go awry, and then it might fail. That we certainly get to reinsert that highlight because the 1 in C inserted a ton of highlights, and we didn't make a theoretical objection, so they don't get to do it now because they are doing the same thing they did earlier in the debate. And they also, their second card is also from March, which doesn't assume new developments. While Congress was in session, their last card also said, we also read the re-highlight of their last card, which they dropped, which says that it's uncertain whether it's going to pass in Congress soon, which means that it's not which means that you get to decisively neg or affirmative, even by their evidence as well, which means that you err out. The tiebreaker here is that the link defense agency shield subsumes a large portion of their offense. Any blame for the plan will be redirected toward the PTO, or the PTO will subvert any of the attention. This is particularly true in this debate when the 1 in C evidence is about legislation, the IP process, not about policy changes in general. This frames agency shield because their evidence says that IP policy is only unpopular when it's a question of legislation, not when it's a question of agency actions. Presidents frequently delegate their policies to agencies because it's easy to pin the blame. Administrators will, quote, take the fall, and presidents retain, quote, deniability for congressional policies. They drop that their evidence says that they'll care more about agency action, more than congressional unity. That's where Mendelsohn evidence from the 1 year dropped. Law obviously didn't have an indictment because he just said the other indicts apply. The magnitude of the link does not apply because that's the reason why the agency will take the blame, because there's no reason Trump's PC will trade off of that. It's not a complete 180 because the PTO will take all of the blame, which means that it doesn't conflict and spill over into other disputes. Any turns case is check over truth. They dropped a scenario on case. Even if I win 0.001% risk of defense on the DA, that outweighs, and it's an aft ballot because you know the case is 100.
Wait, marked cards just have less space. Yeah. I'll figure it out.
just sent the F card.
Thank you.
No, it's just a description.
Yeah, we can look up enough like polygons. Yeah.
We can go up with you.
Take a seat out. Want to see like decks?
You have.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's broken.
Yeah, that's we didn't read that, right? Oh.
That was,
Where's this guy?
that was Jimbles.
Where's the view? That's what Marvel's in here.
I tried to find it, I don't know. But I think he's.
Yeah, he says walking over. I think he's just like on the other side too. So maybe I remember I saw everybody thought it was. And then they piled it in the video. I read a flip paper so I didn't know while he was cooking for me.
Wait, I was helping Serena fix her computer.
I know.
Wait, that's one thing I'm I felt she was like, how do you fix this? I was like, Control Alt Delete, because she had to like, her entire computer's like crashed and like would not like turn on or anything.
Do you know what the rough one was?
I was
Just
walking. He's like waiting while he's waiting for drop. There's a chance this guy's in that other building.
Wait, I just walked.
Feels pain.
For some reason. But,
So far away.
wait, I don't think it was a, voting sheet.
Apparently 7
Or like one of
He
the.
said it was
Yeah,
one,
well,
I think it's
yeah.
dropped and there was
I know.
like balance.
Probably has.
Wait, he also.
Sorry, I took off the one.
Oh, Mr. Forsland?
Hello.
Morty.
No, you can say.
Okay, very good debate. I voted AF. The risk of the arms racing argument outweighs the risk of this. I think that the disad is relatively low risk. It's like, I'll talk through both arguments. I don't think it's anywhere near zero, but I don't really care that much if they access the terminal impact of the disad, which I think that they do. There isn't really an answer to the just like general arms racing thing in the block. I thought you had very good answers, even analytically, to the smuggling stuff, and I just kind of thought that it was a zero at the end of the debate. But the other part of it didn't really have the answer to, which is just like the Mexican cartel stuff. So you needed some sort of defense to that part of the AF, and then I think things would be quite different. Even though I think that the risk of the disad is relatively low. But just sort of missed that. They don't really terminal impact to this in the 1AC, but like the 1NC impact to the politics disad, the bottom part of it is about extended deterrence and allies. And their argument is that allies will freak out because we're basically like militarizing the border to try and deal with the cartel. And I think this argument about time frame is very good. And if I thought the risk of the disad was bigger, I would have thought about this quite a bit more. But I think that just like the AF wins, that internal link is a thing, and they solve it, and it's 100, and it is the terminal impact of the 1NC, 1NC evidence at the end of the debate. The two parts of the disad that I thought were the 2-2AR arguments. I don't really think you've got a will pass card at the end of the debate. The closest thing you've got is this Treasury Secretary reference to them getting an end of the deal thing happening around July 4th. I definitely allowed the rehighlighting. I'm a little bit baffled as to why I wouldn't allow the rehighlighting, to be honest with you, because the 2AC has made an argument that it won't pass. And I think that once you've made that argument, you definitely get to go back and rehighlight cards and make new arguments in the 1AR about won't pass, because you essentially just are giving extra warrants for that. So I'm confused about that, and the app has said there's rehighlightings happening. I get that it's not in like the immediate speech, but it's the same argument that they've made before, which is that it won't pass. So I think the app gets to do that. Now, if it were the 2AR, obviously wouldn't allow that, but I think they get to do that in the 1AR. The two parts of this that undercuts your position is of the rehighlighting of that Treasury Secretary card, which is talking about how they don't have a finalized, like, bill, basically. And I think that fits with the narrative that the AF has, both in the long 2AC card that they've read and the other re-highlighting of your card, that's just like, the big issues are this fiscal issue of Medicare, will the cuts come? I think the part that I wish had been debated a little bit more, you've got this argument that is definitely not answered by the AF, which is that Democrats will feel the pressure of the tax cuts portion of it, but you needed to say, both in the 1NR and in the, and in the 2NR, that it's the justification for, even if there is problems with like the spending and fiscal portions of it, which is the only warrant they've got really in the initial 2AC argument, so I think it's predictable. That will overcome the desire to protect things like Medicare and whatnot, and the Democrats will just be like super scared about the tax cuts portion of it. As is, just like this is dropped, Democrats will like definitely fold on on the tax cuts part of it, but like they're having a whole other debate about the other part of the bill, which is like the funding portion of it and why that's impossible to reconcile. And I think that both is a issue for the GOP and the reconciliation of the two bills, the Senate and the House version, and also an argument for why the Democrats won't just like flip out over tax cuts, because there are other things that they can blame on that. So even if the tax cuts are sort of an issue, that the other thing isn't. The second thing is the agencies argument, and I just thought there's a combination of two things. I don't really think that the 1NR's description of this being like a legislative deal and it being distinct is really borne out in your evidence, but the AF's evidence is sort of the answer to your argument. Your evidence is talking about why presidents will be concerned that blame will be passed to them, and then the card that they've read and the argument they've made is, as a result of that, they will push all of the blame onto the agencies, and the agency heads will get the blame of that, and that because of that they're pushing them to do the dirty work, which to me is also sort of like a argument for why Trump won't really invest PC. I didn't give them 100% of this, and it wasn't like I read all these cards and I was just like, oh, that means there's zero risk of the dissent because of the agency shield. I just thought a combination of this argument plus the uniqueness stuff made the risk of the dissent low enough that I didn't care about the dissent impact anymore, because the AF advantage is like super big. I think it was the right decision not to go for the counter plan, but not having an answer to the arms race thing made things difficult, because I thought you debated every other part of the debate really well. And I'm like, I've mentioned that I think the dissent risk is low, but it's not because I thought that you debated it poorly. Maybe you need one more card that's like a more concrete will pass card, which I know this weekend is like impossible. But I thought you debated this stuff well enough on both the uniqueness portion of it and the agency's link stuff of it. It just, you needed one more like piece of defense to the AF scenario. And like I said, I zeroed out the smuggling thing because I thought the work you did in the 2 and C was convincing, and they didn't really have an answer to it in the 1AR. So not really sure why I care about that at the end of the day.
Yeah, it made a lot of sense. Also answered like every question I had. Thank you for judging.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good luck to you all. You all debated well. I gave you really high points, so hopefully you'll avoid the I'm sure you will actually. I think it'll only be 5 weeks. So congrats to me in this debate. This debate is getting into the 606 debate, 6060 debate and TOC is really hard. Get a lot of rest tonight because tomorrow's a really long.
First things
Thanks for class.
Yeah.
I'll have it.